Scale of 1 to 10. How stunned were you by the news today that the guy who started just yesterday for Washington at quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, has been cut by the team?
Yeah, 10 or 11, Mike. I mean, you just don't see anything like this, right? 1 year after they drafted him 15th overall, I was stunned. And I just didn't see this coming. Despite everything that's happened, it was stunning.
Yeah, we have a thread that we exchange where all of the PFT writers say, well, I'm going to write this story, I'm going to get this story. That's how we keep from crossing streams, a la the Ghostbusters. And every once in a while, there's one that makes us all go, wow. And that was one that made us go, wow. And here's the statement from Coach Rivera this afternoon. I met with Dwayne and informed him that we would be releasing him. I told him that I believe it benefits both parties, that we go our separate ways. We want to thank Dwayne for his contributions these last 2 seasons and wish him well moving forward. I'm impressed that I was able to see all of that because I'm a little bit too old and my eyes aren't as good as they used to be, although I pass the test every time I go back for my driver's license, just so the record is clear. I do not need corrective lenses yet. My understanding is that between what happened last week with the COVID-19 escapades, they fined him $40,000, Charean. They took away his captaincy. But whatever went down yesterday, and I don't know that we're ever going to know this, but I think some stuff went down yesterday when he tried to skip out on the media obligations, and they basically dragged him back in by his ear and made him do it, like my mom used to drag me around by my ear and make me do things I didn't want to do. That something went down within the confines of all of that, I believe, that prompted them to say enough, because he started the game yesterday. So something between the ending of the game or whenever he was benched in the game and today made them say, that's it, we're done, take your $10 million plus we've already paid you, and we may have to pay you another $4.2 million over the next 2 years in guaranteed salary. We don't care, just get the hell out of here.
Completely agree with you, Mike, and that was going to be my point. I think something happened after that game. At minimum, he left the stadium very quickly after the game. We do know that. I mean, that's basically verified because the PR couldn't get him right after the game. He was gone. He had left the stadium. They called him. He didn't answer his phone. They finally got a hold of him, and he did end up doing his media obligation, which is required under the media access policy. So he did end up doing it. But something transpired there. And even if it was as little as leaving the stadium, you remember the one time Vince Young walked out with his jersey and his shoulder pads and everything else on and went home. Maybe it was something like that. But whatever happened, something transpired after that game that Washington said, enough is enough. We are absolutely done. We told you last week this was your last chance, and you didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, and there's a story to be told out there, and maybe someday we will have the information to fill in the gap, but something did go down, and now he is gone, and there could be a fight over this $4.2 million. I laid out what the Washington football team would need to say in the official paperwork to position itself to potentially avoid the $4.2 million. Remember and boy, it seems like a long time ago, the Earl Thomas case with the Ravens. Yeah. Guaranteed money isn't completely and totally guaranteed no matter what. It's guaranteed for skill, injury, and salary cap. You can cut someone for personal conduct detrimental to the team. There's a specific language, personal conduct adverse to the interest of the team's best interest, something like that. There's magic words that you say. And if you cut the player for that reason, if you can prove that's the reason, and that's just not a pretext for skill, injury, or cap, then you can argue the guarantee does not apply. And also, I looked at the language of his contract. They could argue that some of the stuff that's gone down over the past week invalidates the guarantee for the next $4.2 million. And look, it's $4.2 million. Even for a billionaire, it's $4.2 million. And we've learned recently, if we didn't already know, Daniel Snyder, the owner of the team, a little bit litigious. Why not say you'll get nothing and like it and force Dwayne Haskins to come try to get the money if they believe there's a basis for saying you did something wrong? And Charean, the guy's publicly apologized multiple times. That may be all they need to show that he did something he shouldn't have done. Why are you issuing all these apologies if you're not doing things you shouldn't have done?
Yeah, I have no question that Dan Snyder likely will go after that money just based on other things that Dan Snyder has done. We know Dan Snyder is Dan Snyder, and this was his handpicked guy, Mike. He wanted Dwayne Haskins and the coaching staff and scouting department, by all accounts, was not on board with this. And if you're not on board, if your coaching staff, now this is a different coaching staff, I understand, but if your coaching staff and your scouting staff isn't on board with the draft pick, it's probably not going to work out. We saw the same thing happen with Jamarcus Russell, Al Davis, handpicked guy. We saw the same thing with Vince Young, was Bud Adams, handpicked guy. It didn't work out for any of those guys, especially at the quarterback position. The coach and the staff have to be on board with that pick. And obviously they were not on board, and the new staff tried to make this work, and they couldn't make it work either.
Yeah, and, there were the efforts by Ron Rivera early in the offseason when he got the job, and I thought it was a little bit of the effort to coax a greater level of commitment. And Dwayne Haskins reshaped his body. I saw pictures of him when he got to training camp. He looked nothing like he did last year. He was committed. He just wasn't any better, and he had a chance, and it didn't work, and some other thing happened to cause him to plummet all the way to number 3 on the depth chart, and he was just done. And then they needed him, and he had a chance again, and it didn't work. And the strip club thing had to be the last straw, and let's just get through the season and figure it out. And I think that was the decision that they made last week. Common sense would suggest they just said, let's get through the season, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with this guy. And they still could have just carried him on the roster this week, deactivate him for the game against the Eagles on Sunday night. If they make it to the playoffs, deactivate him for those games, and then decide whether or not there's some sort of a trade market. And here's the reality, Charean. One of the big Sunday splash stories for Week 16 was this notion that multiple franchises are doing their homework on Urban Meyer, the former Ohio State coach, who coached Dwayne Haskins. If he gets one of these jobs, maybe you could trade Dwayne Haskins to the Lions, the Jaguars, or wherever it is that Urban Meyer is going to land, although the Jaguars wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if he goes there because they're going to get Trevor Lawrence now. Congratulations, the tank worked. But I am a little surprised at this stage of the season with just one game left, they didn't kick the can. Unless the message was more important to be sent to the locker room. It's possible the guys in the locker room had enough. And this is the kind of thing that maybe galvanizes the team with a playoff play-in game coming up on Sunday night.
Which is why you go back to something happening after that game, Mike, because it does make sense that they would try to trade him in the offseason, do what the Cardinals did with Josh Rosen, send him to Miami. At least you get something for him. They are getting nothing for Dwayne Haskins. And, speaking of Urban Meyer, Ron Rivera called Urban Meyer before the year started and said, how do we get, to this guy? And he said, look, he only started 14 games in college. You have to be patient with him, but he responds to challenge. So that's what Ron Rivera tried to do. We remember in the offseason, he talked about Dwayne Haskins has got to be a better leader. I don't know if he's going to be our starting quarterback. All those things he said. And then after he was benched in week 4, Haskins, Ron Rivera said, we need to see better preparedness from this quarterback. We don't like the way he's preparing. Challenged him again. And every time they've challenged him, he has failed that challenge. So Urban Meyer probably is his best chance to get a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance or whatever chance Dwayne Haskins is on in the NFL right now, Mike.
And I really thought Dwayne Haskins was going to perform better. Now, he came into the NFL young. He left with 2 years remaining of eligibility in college, and it could be he's just a little bit raw. He's a little immature. Look, as my son has progressed through 20, 21, 22, and I've seen him grow and mature, and I've thought back to how he was a couple of years ago, I can see in a lot of these young NFL players the way he was. You're finding your way, and it's difficult. It's challenging. You throw $10 million in guarantees, no, $14 million, but $10 million in cash over 2 seasons into their pockets, into their bank accounts. And it's a lot to process. The stress and the pressure of being a starting quarterback, the social media criticism, it's relentless. So there's still room for Dwayne Haskins to grow, and I think he's got potential. He just needs to have an opportunity to grow in a setting where there isn't a sense of entitlement. Remember last week when we were having this conversation, I said it was a combination of immaturity, stupidity, and the entitlement that comes from having a guaranteed contract, because the attitude is, what are you going to do, cut me? Well, yeah, we did. And this isn't quite apples to apples. The old Chris Carter, Buddy Ryan, all he does is catch touchdowns, and they cut him to give him the wake-up call that worked. It propelled him to the Hall of Fame in Minnesota. But this could be the thing that ultimately helps Dwayne Haskins' career. If he means it when he apologizes, if this isn't just something that was written by a PR flunky and he was told, tweet this from your account, if he really means it, if he really believes it, maybe this is what he needs to turn it around. Humble himself, go fight and compete and scratch and claw and wait for an opportunity and make the most of it when it comes your way. He needs to become a student of the game. He needs to become serious about learning the NFL way, and maybe there's a chance for him to turn it around, Charean.
Mike, he's got the apologies down. And it so much reminds me of Johnny Manziel. And you know I love Johnny Manziel. He did great things at Texas A&M. But every time he screwed up, he sounded so sincere. I'm going to take advantage of this second chance. You know, I've been given a second chance. I did wrong. I'm remorseful. I apologize. Dwayne Haskins has said those same words, and he's been convincing. I mean, I watched it last night after his a game that was so bad. I watched him talk, and he sounded so convincing. I'm going to take advantage of this second chance, and he said it earlier in the week, and he said it earlier this season when he had a COVID violation. And every time he says it, he sounds like he means it, and then he has to say it again and again and again. And now we've heard it 3 or 4 times, and it's really losing its luster at this point, Mike.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, does he just not mean it, or can he not help it? And either way, look, he's young. The brain is still developing for people in their early 20s. He's not the man he's eventually going to be, and these experiences hopefully will help guide him toward becoming the man that he will be. He has the talent. That's undeniable. The question is, what do you do with it, and when and where can you find someone who will trust you with not a starting job for now, with a spot on the depth chart? And Urban Meyer may be the best ticket for Dwayne Haskins.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.